Well, hello again. This is Chris
And Carol.
from Nine Flags Coffee Roasters at 1204 North Street, Nacogdoches, Texas. The zip code is,
75965.
she is correct.
Okay. Phew.
Well, as we have been doing, we call this conversations, coffee conversations with Chris and Carol, or Carol and Chris. And what we try to do is not necessarily persuade people as to what side of an issue or a subject, but we like to show that coffee is something that brings together all people. How about that? So that's what these are, our conversations with Chris and Carol. So last time, I think we cut you a little short. I think you wanted to
Ugh.
have a little input on my tie.
Oh, the pheasant tie.
Tell everybody. Give a little
Well,
input.
from afar, you couldn't tell. It just kind of looked like maybe a little bit of a wild colored tie. But you get up close, and it was all pheasant feathers, arranged in a pattern so that, you can't exactly tell it's pheasant. I don't know who came up with it, but
How
it was
interesting.
It was interesting. It was.
Only
Especially with the corduroy duster.
the
I mean,
corduroy.
I don't even know if a duster can be corduroy, but
Well,
it was.
we know it can. We certainly know it can.
Nothing says interesting quite like a pheasant feather tie and a corduroy duster.
That'll produce conversation, especially around the mental institution.
Yeah, just go walk around with that on. I want to know who made the pheasant tie, though. Like, where did the pheasant tie come from?
I don't know. I got it from my brother.
Okay.
My brother is a connoisseur of fine clothes. Therefore, so let's get on to what I thought that we might get on to today. There are, as we said, coffee is one of the things that promotes conversation. But about this time of year, especially this year, there are some things that people would say, you shouldn't talk about these things.
Oh.
So why don't we jump in the water
Oh.
and let's test the temperature of the water.
Dive on in.
Let's talk about the conversation of politics.
Oh, I knew it.
She knew it.
I wore my USA hat. Did you see? I'm very patriotic.
Well, so Carol,
Yes.
what is the problem with talking politics?
I don't think that there's a problem talking politics. I like to discuss the issues of the day.
But there's a lot of people that say you shouldn't talk politics, not around
I think
the table or.
I
Absolutely no opinion.
I do. I'm sorry, I'm formulating a thought.
She's formulating a thought.
There's a lot. It can be a very emotional topic, and a lot of people have a hard time discussing opposing thoughts when emotion runs high. So I think it can turn a polite situation potentially into something that is disruptive. I don't know. I can talk about hot button topics with opposing parties
Because
and
it's
not get
emotional?
upset about it.
That's why we should leave it alone, because
No,
it's emotional.
I don't think that. I don't agree with leaving it alone. I just wish that people
Would wish upon a star.
would
Hmm.
be able to discuss those topics without being angry at other
And the
people.
other topic they say you
guess.
can't talk about is religion.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't agree with that either.
Well, let's think about something here. You are an individual.
Yes.
Certainly look like an individual, and you have ideas and you have principles that guide your life. And those principles are reflected or manifested in one's faith and one's politics.
Yes.
So we can have not artificial, but a very superficial.
Okay.
We can have a superficial conversation, and we say, "Hi, Carol, how are you?"
Great.
Well, that's nice. And the kids?
Wonderful.
That's good. And the weather's going good, right?
It's chilly,
Yeah. How about those Cowboys?
but I don't care.
You can have a conversation like that, but what do you know about me in that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely
Yeah,
nothing.
and you won't know anything the next time you see that person.
So, I think it would behoove us, you like that word, behoove?
Yeah, that's good.
It would behoove us that if we're interested in people, and why else would we want to talk to people unless we're interested? Where do you work? What do you do? What do you think about this or that or the other? Or, gee, that's interesting. You drive a Prius. How about that? Well, I drive it because I'm trying to keep the earth clean and I'm trying to save us. Oh,
Oh,
well, tell me about this.
yes, tell me about this. I like that approach actually. I like to find out where people's thought processes come from and their experiences and why they think the way they do, which whether it's religion or politics.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's somebody that has a way opposing viewpoint, I want to know where they formulate their opinion or their thought.
So you wouldn't, when I say something like that, you wouldn't say, "Oh, so I see you're one of those stupid organic save the planet radicals."
No,
right?
you know what I would say? I'd say,
You're gonna take my car away?
you know what I want to know?
You're gonna take my oil away? What are you doing?
That where I would go with the Prius conversation is how much did you pay for the car and how much gas are you saving and what's the math equation there?
And they would say, "Well, I got a government subsidy of so much," and then we talk politics.
Oh yeah,
You're stealing my money.
It's just going.
You're taking my
going
tax.
going down the. Well, environmental conversation. I don't think that we have the capability as humans to destroy the earth like some people think. I think we're supposed to be responsible for the environment. We're supposed to do our own part to
How do you
steward the earth.
have discourse with someone that says, "We're killing each other"? We're killing each other. And you need to stop baking cookies. It's too much energy that you're.
Well, I'm going to say, last I checked, I was still American, so I'm going to bake cookies.
Is this the way you're going to carry on with this person? Last time I said, this is heading towards an argumentative.
Last time I checked, still a free country.
I think.
I'm going to bake these cookies.
I think a person should say something along the line of, "Well, how many cookies less will make a difference in the environment? How many cookies should I cook? And is the government going to tell me that? Should the government actually be telling me how many cookies?"
Right, well, yes. And there are people that think the government should be telling you that. But then you go into the whole concern.
She's a very popular person, everybody. But I think that you have some people that would believe that the government is the answer,
the solution to all things.
the solution to all things. And there's some people that think no.
Well, and the problem being is that once the government starts directing things like how many cookies you can make, they start directing you to do everything else. And suddenly you don't have any autonomy as an individual to do anything.
Let's see, this is one side, the other side. And I have a good friend of mine, and he and I both agree. He is a liberal, and I am somewhat of a conservative. And we talked about this, and we agreed that he agreed with me that the difference between conservatives and liberals was that liberals thought that most problems could be solved by the government, and that the conservative view was that the individual could solve most of his problems.
One should be responsible for solving their own problems.
I found that he and I agreed on this, and then we could move on from there.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got a basis for what to talk about. We can talk about what the government should solve, what the government shouldn't solve.
Yes. Yeah. Also, I think it depends generationally. My generation and younger has grown up with a lot of government involvement, and so it's I want to say it's it seems natural to a lot of people that maybe haven't critically thought or learned, been educated on what that looks like if it continues. So,
in other words, take things to its logical conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I've had many conversations with people my age and younger who will say, well, it is the answer is the government. And, well, what about, can't the government just do this, like wave the magic wand? And
Did you say well
I
or
said,
roll?
well, I said, well.
The word is well. I'm sorry. This is something that she and I, see, this is all about.
I say well also.
This is coffee. Here we go. We have a disagreement, a correction, an admonition, and a click of the coffee cups. I would say one thing, that if we have divergent opinions, maybe I should listen to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he has something to offer me that I haven't thought about, and vice versa. Which brings me to the question, are we talking to each other or are we talking at each other?
Frequently at.
What is the difference?
Your at is you're not interested in what the other person has to contribute to the conversation. It's a more of a command than a tone than intercourse.
That would be rather arrogant. They have nothing to offer me. I've got the answer.
Yeah, I can.
Sit down, shut up. I'll tell you the way it's supposed to be. Conversations don't go very far like that.
I will say that I have certainly dealt with individuals that they need to be talked at because they don't have they have very little to contribute as per
in other words, they need some
depth
correction.
of maybe the just rattling off things that they've heard just off the television, or there's not been a whole lot of research and development of their ideas.
You and I have talked a bit about bibliography.
Bibliography.
In other words,
footnotes.
You say this.
Where did you get that?
What do you base that?
Yeah.
Where did you get that?
Yeah.
And then they should say, well, such and such book by this person on page 42.
I used to have a friend that he would just come off with information, and I put that in quotations, and I'd say, well, where did you get that? Do you have like your little book of facts you just came up with? He had no bibliography ever. It's frustrated me so much.
Sometimes we may not be able to put our finger on where it is. That would lead to a second conversation. I don't know right now. I know I read it. Next time we get together,
I'll find out.
I'll find out.
I'll find out. Yeah.
Now, that's okay.
As opposed to, I don't know.
I believe that.
I just know.
I just know.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, that doesn't count as far as making something a fact.
You know,
I just know.
I think here's a couple of points that I would make insofar as if you're going to talk politics over the table or over a cup of coffee, mind you, it is the common denominator of all humanity. I would say number one, ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you disagree, ask a question, such as,
Yes.
do you believe, so if you believe that, then where does that take you? Or would that mean that this is true then? Or, in other words, you're asking questions, you're getting a person to commit themselves on something, you get a better idea of what they're really talking about, what they really mean when they say it. I think that's important. My mother taught me this, that when you're talking to somebody and you disagree, phrase your objections in the form of a question.
I think that's very good. And using the word behoove.
Love it.
There are topics that do make me angry. They make me, I feel very upset that there's certain things that people just think are fine, but I don't feel the need to put that across in a discussion.
Case in point. Let's say we're talking abortion.
I have no time for it.
But if we were, mind you, and somebody told me that they are free choice,
Oh, okay.
I would say, and they were saying that, they felt that abortion was not wrong. I would ask them, are you saying that what's in a woman's body is not a baby? Now, see, I'm not saying you're wrong. I am phrasing my objection to what they've said through a question.
Yeah.
And I'm giving them an opportunity to expand and explain
Yeah.
more of what they
Yeah.
mean.
I agree. That's one of several topics that I go, there's no amount of convincing on the opposing side that's going to change my mind, but I am curious about people's own thought process. And if you're talking about changing another person's mind, you're not going to necessarily encourage a different line of thinking by being awful.
Which would bring us to the next point. Be nice.
Be nice.
Yeah. If we're talking, don't spill your coffee on the person you're speaking to.
Be considerate.
Be
As my
considerate.
Uncle Bob says, it's the easiest thing in the world.
So ask questions instead of saying, in that case, we're just a baby killer. Quit saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just say, do you mean, are you saying that? And then if they say yes, good enough. Maybe you can learn something about why they.
That's it. It's people come from different frames of reference, so you need to know where that other person comes from, so that you can really tailor the conversation. If I'm talking about like when you're debating a point.
Well, let's say we're not debating. Let's say we're just talking.
Mm-hmm.
Debate, it might be a little more formal and it may be a little more adversarial. But we're sitting around a coffee cup, being friendly,
Mm-hmm.
and we get into this. And then we would say, so you don't think it's a baby? And they would say, of course not, because of number one, number two, number three. That's why I don't think that. Aha, okay. Now we can go on and we can discuss those. We're in conversation now. We are not in an argument. Be nice. Ask questions. And another point I might make here is that everyone has an opinion,
Yeah.
and everyone has a perspective. It's not that all opinions are equal. Hold on, guys. But all opinions are important. there's a difference. Opinions are valuable insofar as they are supported by other things. They're not necessarily valid just because I hold to this line of thought. They're important because of what bibliography I can bring to the table. And even if someone else has a different opinion and they don't have as much, let's look at what they do have and let's address it and let's appreciate from where they come from. But we're talking about politics. Thomas Jefferson said government was a necessary evil. So this is something we're just going to have to contend with is politics. It's not going to go away. But I want to bring this into a sense of unity. We are all Americans. And that's what we need to remember. We may disagree on whether Bernie Sanders should be president or Donald Trump should be president or Elizabeth Warren should be.
Okay.
Do I sense an opinion coming on? But the thing is that we are all Americans. So I would ask you, Carol, when we say that we are all Americans, what does that mean? We're all Americans. So I'd say, Carol, what does that mean when you say we're all Americans, even though I said it?
Well, if we're all entitled to the same rights and privileges of being Americans, which part of that is our freedom to speak and think differently and have opposing viewpoints. So I think there's a mutual respect you have to have for.
So you defend my right to be wrong?
Yeah, sure.
Here, here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
vice versa.
I'm here to help if you are wrong. If that moment
Presents
itself.
It presents itself all the time.
I'm here to help.
So.
Or you can go on being wrong. That's fine too.
Let me swerve this conversation
Right
on over
into
what I would say makes us Americans. And I will go to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, a classic.
This is something that we all do. It is something that supposedly binds us together. The Greek word would be kaleo, the glue that holds all Americans together, whether they be Republican, Democrat, Independent, or
et cetera, et cetera.
Whigs. I think that party went out. The Pledge of Allegiance was first started in 1892 by a man by the name of Francis Bellamy. And since he started it, it's undergone some changes. At first, it was to be used for all countries. Later on, in 1931, they changed it to be the United States of America only. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of and in 1931, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The under God part came along in 1954 when we were having a great scare of communism coming in, an anti-God government philosophy. So it was inserted during that time. But one nation, who cannot agree that we should be one nation? Or should we be divided? North, the South? How did that go? The East, the West? The flyover country and the coast? No.
It's better together.
We are one country, and this country binds us together. One nation, under God. If you don't believe in God, what is the problem? What's the problem? I mean, you're under something that doesn't exist.
Right.
If you want to leave that part out and you're an atheist, nobody's going to chase you off the planet.
I actually haven't met any atheists that have a problem with it for the most part. I've had, a few that were like, yeah, that doesn't give them a headache about anything.
And there is some ideas that, and I adhere to these, that the founding fathers established this nation on Christian principles.
Mhm.
We could go through that, but
That can become quite a debate too. Which I'm with you. I'm
But-
on Team Chris over here.
let's get back to
Yeah.
one nation under God, indivisible. Who wants to be divisible?
Well, it doesn't sound right if you say.
Well, of course, on my side, I would say the Democrats. The Democrats would say the Republicans. Can we not be divided? Is there not something that we can't come together on? Is there not something we can't improve this country on? I would say so. When I've talked to liberal friends of mine, we are not as far apart as most people would like
Yeah,
to make it
I
out.
agree. I agree with that. Yeah, and you know when you talk to individuals as opposed to listen to what the television is telling you, you do find that out.
I would encourage people to go back and read some of the documents that were, or just go back and read the Declaration of Independence. Look at the Pledge of Allegiance and go through and look at it. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty,
And justice. For all.
liberty and justice. Who's against that? That would be un-American.
Yeah, not me.
Now, the liberals can say, well, it's all those redneck Americans that want to make us all this way or that way. It's un-American to not ascribe freedom and liberty and justice to all. Are we a perfect country? No, we're not a perfect country. However, we've been moving in the right direction. And as long as we're moving in the right direction, this is good. And for all. We went, and it wasn't just us, but the world went through this idea that at one time, blacks were not human. Indians were not human. We got through that. Everybody knows now who's human. We're all human.
The humans are human.
Although, sometimes when I watch the behavior of some,
You do.
yeah, you certainly would wonder. So,
Well, and I think a thing to remember is that nobody is perfect. Therefore, we are a nation made up of imperfect people. And we're not ever going to have this utopia where there's not some disruption or discord. So if we're talking about politics in your thought process is we got to make things perfect, that's not reasonable. We're doing the best we can with what we have
and where we are.
and people and whether you're talking justice, liberty, freedom, whatever your subject matter, you're going to have people in situations where mistakes are made.
I would say that when freedom or justice is taken away from one person, then at another time, they might be taking my freedom and justice away from me. And that's why we should stick up for freedom and justice for all.
Right.
Because
For all, yeah.
when it's bad for one of us, it's potentially bad for all of us. We're all Americans, and we need to remember that. And I think that we can talk about politics, especially with a cup of coffee.
Especially.
The unifying human common denominator.
Think.
Well, we're about out of time, and this is Chris.
Think, Harold.
Till next time. We're done. I think they'll know when to dump this.
I heard you say something.